this is the first, I guess, a series of presentations that we're going to have today. We've heard from Mr. Sullivan on employment law. We're now going to hear from Michael Ewing with Botsley, Wood & Stiles here in Richmond, Virginia, about family law. We'll also have some sessions later today about some other various practice areas. And as new lawyers, you may not practice employment law, you may not practice family law, you may have your own specialized niche. And that's really the trend in our profession. But one of the most valuable things that you can do as a lawyer is that when a client calls your office or sends an email to your firm, that you can at least intelligently recognize whatever their problem is and know who the right person is to call. Sometimes making a good referral is the best service that you can provide to a potential client, so that you can find the specialist or the expert in that particular area so that they can be better served. And our next presenter, Michael Ewing, if you're in the Richmond area, really is the man to call with respect to family law issues. He is, I mentioned he would and he should, because he has recently been named a fellow with the American Academy of Matrimonial Lawyers. He is a graduate of the University of Arkansas and University of Richmond. Having graduated from there, he has practiced family law almost exclusively since sitting in your chair, which is really his first day of practice. And Mr. Ewing is now going to speak with us about his experience handling various domestic relations issues, dealing with both custody and visitation, divorce, child support, counseling families, working with various health and other mental health care professionals, and really drawing on his broad range of experience in this very important practice area so that you may better serve your clients, whether you're practicing family law as well, or you're making that very key reform. So please join me in welcoming Mr. Michael Ewing. Thank you.
Randy Sullivan was in my law school class. I think I know he graduated first in the class. I said the same. Probably like the same. He was first in the class. I was first in the class. He had a PowerPoint presentation, and I have a legal pad. You guys could weigh bankruptcy, family law, family law. That was your choice. I appreciate you choosing family law. I need to break it to you that they're the same. Exactly the same in the last 5 years. I have been a family lawyer for almost 20 years now. It's kind of like my AA, my name is Michael Ewing, I am a divorce lawyer. I've only admitted that I was a family lawyer, that I was a divorce lawyer, for about 12 years. For about 8 years, I made up stories. I said I was doing small business work, or I did a little bit of everything, had kind of general practice. I never really said I was a divorce lawyer, but I wasn't lying, I was doing those things, but primarily I was a divorce lawyer. Why would I be upset to sit in front of people like you and say that I'm a divorce lawyer? Well, my wife's a lawyer too. She's in-house for an insurance company. And we would go to cocktail parties, we would go to bar functions. If I said that I was a divorce lawyer, people would say, like I was saying, I was a garbage collector. You know, somebody said that the family lawyers are the proctologists of the profession. I represented a garbage collector one time, and we had this same discussion. And he said, you know, I hate telling people what I'm doing, but I own a fleet of trucks. I make a ton of money, but people still look at me this way because I'm a garbage collector. And so, you know, be honest, it hurts your feelings. Hurts your feelings. You look at, you know, your whole educational career has led to this moment. You tell someone you're a divorce lawyer, and they go, I just feel bad. Well, I had an awakening after about 8 years, and I finally figured out why people acted that way. Why people had made that face. It's very simple. It's because people cry in my office. That's it. They sit in front of me and they cry. If you drove to my office right now, I have 11 lawyers there. Someone's crying there right now, I promise you. Someone is crying. I was in court yesterday, Maricopa Juvenile Court, and I cried. Everybody around me was crying. I cried too. I had to get out of there. It was embarrassing. I mean, I cried. People cry in my profession. People are going through the worst time of their life. The biggest decision they had made to that point was to get married and to have children. And that decision was a failure. The biggest decision they made in their life was a failure. They're sad about it, they're mad about it, they're all those things wrapped up into one. They're not themselves. This didn't happen to me, but my partner is in a settlement conference with a guy. He was a businessman, respected man in the community. Just sitting in there at a four-way settlement conference. My partner got up and walked out to talk to the other lawyer, and the wife got up and she walked out too. Left my client, or our client, in the conference room. Wife left her purse in there. The guy picked up the purse and beat in a purse. In a conference room, in the lawyer's office. Well, that's not who he is. That's not who he is. But that's who he was that day. That's who he was that day. And when I go to parties and I see Randy Sullivan there, and he's a respected employment lawyer, and he hears that I'm doing divorce law, he's saying, well, you deal with people being in purses. That's who I am. That's what I do. Around the same time, the truth is I didn't want to deal with that either. For 8 years, I was a divorce lawyer, and I didn't want to deal with emotions. And I cannot tell you how many times I said these words. Let's keep the emotions out of it. I was an idiot, a complete idiot. There's no way that you can handle divorce cases and keep the emotions out of it. I was not doing a very good job, I can tell you that. Finally, I realized that that's why people were reacting that way to me. And finally, I realized that I wasn't doing a very good job. And I decided I'm going to have to go do something else. I'm going to go be an estate planner or something, tax lawyer, or I'm going to have to be better at this. And I made a conscious effort to get better at it. I actually went to some seminars, did things on how to listen better, how to spot these problems, and how to be better. And I did get better. I remember a case, my client, not very smart, like a lot of my clients, but he had inherited, his daddy was smart, his daddy made a lot of money, and he inherited a lot of money. And his wife wasn't very smart either. Neither one of them were very smart, but they had tons of money. And his wife, they had separated, and his wife had taken $750,000 out of their account, and she had an account in her name. And they had all this real estate. And it was all in his name, it wasn't in her name, but all this was his separate property, his inheritance. But she was out telling me they were cutting timber off of his property, and I was freaking out about it. I mean, we need to do something about this, and he needed to help me do something. I couldn't do it by myself. But no lie, we would sit down and talk. We talked many times. And every time he would talk about his daddy had given him some little toy soldiers, and they were in a box in the attic at the house that she was living in. And he said, I got to get these toy soldiers back, because I know she's going to tear up my dad's toy soldiers. And I said, stop talking about these toy soldiers. You got $750,000 of your money. Stop talking about that. But he wouldn't. And finally, because I'm an idiot, it took me about 5 or 6 meetings to figure it out. Luckily, there was a good lawyer on the other side, somebody I had a relationship with, and I called her up and I said, you got to help me with these toy soldiers. We're not going to get anything done. And she understood, because she was smarter than me. And she went and talked to her client. We got the toy soldiers back, and after that, we got the case settled. But it was never, ever going to settle until I got those toy soldiers, because that was his deal. That was the emotional piece to him. That was a part of his dad. He had to have that back. I had another lady. She came to see me. And she sat down across from me, and she said that she'd been married 30-something years, and she caught her husband cheating on her with a younger woman. And she had already hired a private investigator, and she had her little folder in front of her, and it had all the pictures that the investigator had taken. And, the husband walking into a motel, all this kind of stuff I'd seen a big time. And they owned a business. They created this business from scratch, and it was very successful. And they were making lots of money. They owned lots of real estate. And as a divorce lawyer, that's a good case. I feel good about that case. It came in my office. And, instantly I started talking to her about, we need to hire forensic accountants, value that business. We've got to get this, we need appraisers, value this property. It's commercial real estate appraisers. And I see the road, and I'm going down the road, and she's just blank. Well, I needed her to get some information for me. I sent her out to get the information. She came back a couple weeks later. She didn't really have it together. We had the same conversation all over again. And 2 weeks after that, we had the same conversation all over again. 2 weeks after that, we just kept having the same conversation. And I'm fired up, ready to go, and she's not. And finally, again, because I'm an idiot, I finally looked at her and I said, you think that's your fault, right? You think this is your fault? And she did. She thought it was her fault that her husband was cheating on her with a younger woman. And so we talked about that. And it was the first time that she looked at me and actually had any understanding of what I was talking about. It was the first time we had any connection whatsoever. We talked about it. And every time she came to see me, she had that little folder with those pictures in it. And then, about the 5th meeting, that folder tattered. The picture, she'd looked at it 1,000 times. And I reached over, I grabbed that folder, and I said, I'm keeping this. And that was also the first time she ever laughed, because I have a lot of pictures at home too. But I said, I'm keeping this. And we got on the phone, we called a counselor. And we got her set up, and she went to see a counselor the next day. And I didn't see her again for months. I knew she was going to counseling, but she wasn't talking to me. And that was fine. She came back to see me, and she was not fixed. It's not like everything was better when she came back, but she was able to talk to me. And we had conversations about forensic accountants and appraisers. And we got started. We fought, we did everything we needed to do. Months later in my office, we settled the case. Our judge was there, we mediated all day long, we settled, we signed, everything was done. And she's leaving, and I'm saying goodbye to her in the reception. And she grabs me and hugs me as hard as I've ever been hugged. And she just got about $2 million in cash, so I hugged back as hard as I've been hugged too. And and she left, and I looked at my receptionist who was there, and she had tears in her eyes, and I probably did too. And I said, we did some good today. We did some good today. And I thought, I can go to that cocktail party, and I can see Randy Sullivan at that cocktail party, and they can talk, look down at me or whatever, and I can say, no one hugged you like they hugged me today. No one did. And that case took place around the same time as my awakening. And I always think about it because it's everything that family law is all about. And it's not because I was representing the innocent spouse there. I mean, I can tell you about representing the guilty party in Louisa not long after that, or not long ago. His girlfriend he committed adultery with in the hallway with a 5-week-old child. We're trying custody, and that's not a good fact. It's not a good fact for me. But I had the same relationship with that person. I had the same connection with that person. And that's what's important about all of this. The reason I tell you those stories is because I don't want you to get 8 years into a domestic practice and have to have an awakening like I did. Family law is a great area. I am proud to stand up and say that I'm a domestic lawyer. But know what you're getting into. If you don't want to deal with that, if you don't think that you can deal with that, don't. Go practice employment law with Randy Sullivan, be a tax lawyer or something. Don't do this. Know what it's about. I'm not going to spend all of my time today talking about crying and hugging. There's a lot more to practicing law. I'm also not going to spend a lot of time talking to you about how to calculate child support or how spousal support works in Virginia. You can go figure that out for yourself. I want to talk to you about practicing law. Family law is an important area of the law because it's the area where people get in contact with lawyers, the law, judges, court system. I mean, how many of your friends have patent and trademark problems? I mean, not many. Not many of my friends. If your friends have that, you live in better neighborhoods than I do. My friends get divorced. My friends are the product of divorces. My friends are witnesses in divorce cases. How we treat them during that process shapes the way they think about lawyers in the court system. And that's important. That's important to me. Judge Dennis Smith in Fairfax Circuit Court. He was a family lawyer before he was on the bench. And he hears lots of criminal cases. And he keeps a little pad just like this under his desk. And he keeps some notes. And the last time I heard him speak, he said that 85% of the violent criminals that come in his courtroom are the product of divorces or single parent homes. Now that's not our fault. We didn't do that. That's you can talk about whose fault it is, but certainly it's parents' fault. But lawyers and judges can make that situation a little bit better. We can also make it worse. And we make it worse a lot. A lot. I've probably made it worse a lot. But it's important. It's an important thing. When a family lawyer comes into your office, they only want a few things. The big things, but the few. They want you to care about them. They want you to fight for them. They want you to get the result that they want. And they want you to charge them a fair fee. And I don't have time because I've already wasted my time talking about hugging and crying. But all of those things are important. Caring about them doesn't mean that you're going to hug them. You can hug them if you want to, but that's not what they want. They want you to care about them professionally. And that's where we can get better. If you look at all the disciplinary proceedings in Virginia, and you get this little report every month that says everybody's been disciplined, every single one of them talks about not returning telephone calls. Every single one of them. At some point in there, they didn't return telephone calls. And that got them in trouble. Return the calls. Return the phone calls. Do not be a lawyer who hides behind voicemail. I hate those guys. I hate them. I call them, I leave them a message, they call me back in 10 minutes. I can tell you that if I'm sitting at my desk and that phone rings, I'm picking it up. I'm answering it. And I can't tell you how many times people are surprised on the other end because they're used to being treated poorly. People in the society are used to being treated poorly by professionals. And they can't believe that, oh, I didn't expect to get you. I said, well, I'm sitting here, I picked it up. You called, you know. Showing the client that you care about them starts with the very first telephone call. Not just in family law, in every area of the law. You're going to go back to your office, and you're going to have a list of calls. Mom called, your brother, and other lawyers, and existing clients. But hopefully there's going to be a couple calls from new clients. Call those people first. Call them first. Now, one reason to call them first, because you can't practice law without clients. If you don't have clients, you're going to starve to death. So call them first. But also think about how bad does it have to be on the other end of that call? How bad does it have to be for them to pick up the phone and call the lawyer? It's bad. Don't give that message to your secretary and tell him or her to call and set an appointment for that client. Don't do that. Don't do that. If you do that, 99% of the time they don't even come in. Pick up the phone and call them. They'll say, oh, Mr. Ewing, I just need to come in and see you. And I said, well, hey, do you have a second? You're in a place where you can talk? Tell me about what's going on right now. And sometimes they'll say, well, I need to close my door or go where my kids can't hear me. I said, well, do that. I sit there and I wait. And I give them about 15 minutes. Let them tell their story a little bit. And I'll say, I've been doing this for a long time. I've dealt with that a lot. There's a couple of things I see. Come in and I promise we're going to deal with it. I promise you we're going to deal with it. And you can tell just from talking to them, they feel better. You made that person feel better in 15 minutes. I didn't make any money doing that, but I got that client. And I told that client that I'm going to care about. It starts when they walk in your office. Don't bring a client into your office and hand them the little client sheet that they have to fill out their address. And that thing's been copied 1,000 times. It's not even straight on the page anymore. You don't care about them. You don't care about them. Don't take them in your office and you've got files scattered all around your office. Don't take them in the conference room and David Smith's file at the other end of the table. I've seen that. I go to other lawyers' offices and we're going to take deposition. We're at the clean end of the table. There, down the other end is David Smith's file. David Smith's file is scattered all over the place. And the clients are looking at that and they're like, I hope I'm not David Smith, because they don't care about David Smith. He's down there scattered all over the table. That seems little. That's huge, because the thing that you have to know about family law clients is they're scared to death. They're scared to death about you. They don't know you. They came to you because their friend said that you did a good job for them or something. They're scared to death that their wife's lawyer is better than you. And all of this stuff matters. All of it matters a lot. When you go to court, I see this happen all the time. All the time. I used to call it the Babe Ruth lawyers. You've seen those movies of Babe Ruth and the film's going fast, and Babe Ruth is going really fast. Well, they look like Babe Ruth. They're walking down the hall, they got a file under their arm and paper sticking out all over the place, and they plop down next to their client 5 minutes late. Oh, what a day. I mean, that's the biggest day in that lady's life or in that man's life. It's a big day. Sometimes you're just setting it for trial, but it's a big day to them. They're nervous. You walk in there and there are files scattered all over the place, and you're talking about all the other things you've done that day. You don't care about them. They're not important to you. It's a big deal. Get yourself together. Get yourself together, walk in there and sit down and act like you're ready to go. You have to fight for your clients, obviously. I say obviously. I don't know that that's always so obvious. And you have the result that they want. Well, they need help a lot. They need a lot of help identifying what that result is. They may say the result is one thing when they walk in, but you've got to help them with that. And that's an area where I made mistakes as a young lawyer, probably still do. But I see young lawyers make this mistake all the time. They have the guy that walks in and has had a 30-year marriage. His wife hasn't worked in 30 years because she's raised 3 children. He makes $250,000 a year, and he says, I'll be damned if I'm going to pay her a penny of alimony. Well, the young lawyer says, we're going to work hard on that. We're going to try to make that happen and all this kind of stuff because you want to make that guy happy. You want to help him. That's the result you want. You want to help him. The lawyer's been practicing for 20 years says, I don't care what you want. You're going to pay alimony. It's just a matter of how much, how long. And then he yells at me. He tells me I don't know the law. I said, you know, if you know the law, why do you need me? You don't need me. You need to go down the street and find somebody else. You have to be willing to tell your client no. You have to be willing to tell your client that they're being unreasonable. You have to manage their expectations. Do that for them, do that for you. If you don't manage the expectations, you're going to get bar complaints. My lawyer told me that I wouldn't have to pay alimony. Now I'm paying $5,000 a month indefinitely. I didn't know that was going to happen because he didn't tell me. You also have to go into court and ask for something that's reasonable. I see this all the time. The lawyer stands in front of the judge and starts making a plea for something that's never going to happen. It's never going to happen. And the lawyer, you know, the judge has heard 10 of those cases already today. I mean, why is this case going to be different? Why is this guy going to walk out and not pay alimony after a 30-year marriage? Why's that going to happen? I mean, it's just foolishness. I saw a lawyer the other day in court. He's trying to introduce blatant hearsay. It's just hearsay. The lawyer objected and the judge sustained it just immediately. It was hearsay. The lawyer stood up and took 5 minutes arguing why that hearsay should come in. And the argument, I mean, it's just ridiculous. It was ridiculous. It made no sense to make that argument. You know, I wanted to get up and leave because it was, you know, it's embarrassing when you see somebody failing that bad. You just don't want to be a part of it. And the judge remembers that. Remembers that guy came in there and made that argument. The next time he's standing in front of him and he tells him, Judge, the law is this, the judge is saying, I don't know about that. I don't know that that's the law because I mean, you thought that hearsay should come in too. They remember that stuff. That's where your reputation comes from. I like to believe that the judges think that when I walk in the courtroom, I'm always asking for something that at least halfway makes sense, at least impossible, because I want them to think, well, Ewing doesn't bring anything in here and that's unreasonable. He's always reasonable about what he asks for. You know, at some point, the little things start going your way. You know, you get the benefit of the doubt sometimes, and that's where it comes from. That's where it comes from. Some of my fancy notes up here. The other thing that you need to remember about family law, and it happens a lot with younger lawyers. These are not your kids. It's not your case. You know, I'll have a lawyer that will call me on the phone, and he'll just start yelling at me. Your client did this, and he's yelling back with it, you know, did all these things. And I said, wait a minute, Bob, were you there? Did you see that? I mean, you act like you were there. You're acting like my client hit you in the face. I mean, were you there? Stop yelling at me. If you want to gain credibility with an older lawyer, you call him or her on the phone and say, my client told me. My client told me that this happened. Have you heard anything about that? Has your client said anything to you about that? You know, you already in my book, you're up a couple notches, okay? Because you recognize something that clients don't always tell the truth. They don't always see things the same way that everybody else does. Sometimes they pee in people's purses, you know. You're not my children. You're not my children. You know, you have to separate yourself from that a little bit. Along those same lines, don't take it home. So many lawyers, and this. I told you all the things that I'm bad at. This is one of the other things that I'm bad at. Don't take it home. Again, they're not your children. They're not your problems. Criminal lawyers say, do not go to jail for your client. Do not go to jail with your client. Same with family law. Don't take your client's problems are not your problems. Okay? They're not your problems. I'm not good at that. I love being honest. I'll stay up all night. I'll stay up all night worrying about something. I had a case in New Kent County, and I was representing a girl that was, she was in her 20s, but she already had 3 children. She had told me that her husband was a drug abuser, was abusing her, abusing the children. But it wasn't obvious. It's, you know, a lot of times it's not obvious. But I was convinced that it happened. And we had a trial scheduled at New Kent before Judge Hoover, and one thing you need to know about Judge Hoover is he's tough. He scares people, scares lawyers, scares me. You know, when you get ready to go down there, you're thinking, man, I've got to have this together because he's not going to accept, you know, it has to be together, it has to be by the book. And of course, we had asked for the husband to be drug tested. Like always, the drug test results are not back yet. And they're not back yet the day before trial. And so I'm worried, how am I going to prove this? How am I going to prove that he's using drugs? And, it's her word against his. And so, we had met, prepared. And it was by far the biggest day in this young lady's life. By far the biggest day. And we made plans to meet there an hour ahead of time, and we did. We prepared, we went in, and lucky for me, the drug test results came back while we were in the courtroom, and he tested positive, and Judge Hoover went berserk, and because the guy lied about it for several hearings prior to that. He yelled at him, and everything went great. We were still in there for several hours, and things went great. And so we're out in the hallway, and I got my hug, you gotta get your hug afterwards. I'm feeling good about myself. And we walked out on the front steps, and New Kent is one of the older Virginia courthouses, big white columns and everything. We're standing out there, and she says, "Do you want to see something cool?" I said, "I'd love to see something cool." We just won. It was great. And she's wearing I can't remember now, blouse or sweater or something. It was reasonably low cut, nothing horrible, but enough she could reach her hand inside. She reaches her hand inside her shirt, inside her bra. And I'm thinking, I know that would be great, but I'm not sure that this is necessary. And I'm looking at it because I'm thinking a lot of times when you finish up, you see Judge Hoover, he drives around in his car and he's leaving. I thought Judge Hoover's going to drive out here, and this lady's got her hand in her bra right out here with me on the front steps. She pulls this handkerchief out of her bra and she opens it up. And there's a baby possum fetus in this handkerchief. We have been there for hours. And she's had a possum in her bra the whole time. And I'm thinking, if Judge Hoover, knowing him, if he's up there and he knows he has a drug abuser on one side and a lady with a possum in her bra on the other, those kids are coming home with me. And that was one time I walk into the house and say, "Honey, sorry, I got 3 new kids coming in." This is a side story, but I had a real estate appraiser that I never could get him to do anything. He wouldn't show up on time. He wouldn't go see the house, but I needed this lady's house appraised. I called him on the way back from New Kent. I told him the possum story, and he was out there the next day. He was there immediately. He got to see the possum, and he tells the same story that I do. I'm glad that he saw it because he's the only one that can confirm that she actually had the possum in the bra, because he saw it too. But the point of that is that I stayed up all night. I stayed up all night worrying about this. And I was positive she was up all night worrying about it. But she's not worried about it. She's worried about this possum dying. This stupid possum she found out in the front yard, she thinks it's going to die, and she's keeping it warm in her bra. That's what she's worried about. I took her problems home, and she didn't even have her problems at home. So have some perspective. Have some perspective. Remember the possum story. Just when you think it's the end of the world for them, and the possum bro. Was this the end we ended? 10:15. I don't know. I give this speech every year. I don't always get to this part. I've gone a little faster. Told the possum story a little quicker today. The last thing on my list of 4 things that we find is to be reasonable with the billing. And the other thing, if you read the disciplinary reports, they don't return telephone calls, and the building was a mess. And as the president says, 60-70% of you are going to be in small firms. Randy Sullivan works in a big firm. There's somebody who handles all his billing, and it's probably perfect. My firm, we have 11 lawyers in our building. It's handled by someone else. But lawyers that have 1 or 2 lawyers in the firm, which is most of the lawyers in Virginia, billing is a problem. Billing is a problem. And I've seen the bills from other lawyers, and sometimes it'll say representation in custody case, $2,500. That's what it says. That's broken down. That's it. $2,500. Hey, you are begging for a bar complaint when you do that. Just begging. You have to keep the client up to date on the bills at all times. Send them a bill every 30 days. Talk to them about legal fees all the way along. I have speech when I first meet with them. I say, we're going to talk about legal fees. I explain the billing process, and I say, we're going to talk about legal fees every step of the way. Don't be afraid to pick up that telephone and call me about this. We're going to say, we can take so-and-so's deposition. This is what it's going to cost. Is it worth it? We can go and argue about this point in court. This is what it's going to cost. Is it worth it? We're going to have those conversations. And if you do, you won't get the bargaining points. Record your time as you're doing it. I know you didn't come to this seminar for this building thing, but I promise, if you remember anything, remember this. Write it down as you do it. Don't try to go back at the end of the day and recreate what you did. You're going to miss stuff. You're going to overbill. Because the clients know, they talk to you for only 15 minutes and you build them for 20, and they'll say something about it. They'll say something about it. And then you get into an adversarial relationship with your client, and you're going to not be able to act. Write it down as you're doing it. Build them, show them, telephone call them, what you did. I spent a lot of time counseling attorneys in my office, paralegals in my office, about how to write something down. They will routinely write down, review file, point 5. Nothing makes a client madder than that. They're looking at their bill and they got billed a couple $100 for somebody to review the file. Don't say that. Don't say you're reviewing the file. Even if you're reviewing the file, don't say you're reviewing the file. Say you're preparing for trial, you're preparing a motion, do something, It's okay that you reviewed the file. It's okay that you billed for it. Just call it something. Think about the client on the other end of that they're reading. The other thing that I do, and we have young lawyers in our office, it takes them longer to do something than it would take me. I may give them a project, I get the bill back, and they spend 3.5 hours on something. I'm like, oh my God, I can't go for that. I can't go for 3.5 hours. A lot of people will take that 3.5 hours and they'll mark it down to an hour. So when the client gets the bill, they only see an hour. Well, that's fair, but I don't do that because the associate worked 3.5 hours on that lady's file, and I want her to know he worked 3.5 hours on it. But at the end of that bill, I gave a courtesy discount. I discounted those 2.5 hours of the overwork, and it shows. Discount on so-and-so's time for that much. I can't tell you how many emails and how many calls I get from the client, and they say, I really appreciate that discount. I really appreciate it. Well, it was the right thing to do anyway, but somehow I'm getting something back for it. They're happy with me because I'm writing the bill down, and they saw it. If you write it down and they don't see it, you're not helping yourself. Any questions? Just about 3 minutes. Any questions? I stood up here and talked the whole time. I noticed that Randy, because he's number 1 in the class, he asked questions to get some interaction going. But I like to preach to you from up here from the podium. Anything else? I appreciate you coming out. Family law. I am a divorce lawyer. I'm proud of it today. Proud of it. It is a rewarding profession. It has proven to be recession-proof. That's important. That's important. People in the other room, that's recession-proof too. I remember all those people that looked down at me in the early going, especially the commercial real estate lawyers. All of them, they're the ones, ooh, family law. I can't tell you how many letters I received from commercial real estate lawyers saying, I always wanted to get into family law. Looking for a job. They didn't want family law. They're looking for a job. And I remember all those people looking at me like that in those cocktail parties. Now they want a job because we're the only people that have jobs right now. So anyway, you have questions about family law, call me.
Mr.